Hi there. Welcome back to the Granite Dan channel. This is Dan. I wanted to make this video for some time now, and so I'm first of all going to apologize for sleeping on it because just this morning I opened up my LinkedIn feed and I was able to view and read this article here, which indicates that Fortinet is confirming that a vulnerability in their appliances, it continues to be exploited even after patches were released and thought to be applied to protect from this vulnerability back in early December. So this vulnerability, of course, is the CVE 2025-59718. Which impacts Fortinet firewalls, allowing authentication bypass with SAML SSO enabled. So edge security is a big thing that I'm quite passionate about, because I've seen time and time again with clients that their edge devices being left unpatched become the method of exploit that threat actors use to gain a foothold in their environment. Specifically with this CVE that I was just mentioning, people have seen threat actors log into their appliances, create their own administrative accounts, build configuration to enable VPN access into the user's network, and just exfiltrate their entire firewall configs. It's all very dangerous stuff, and it's happening in seconds. It's a highly scripted attack that's going on. So I'll put a link to that article in the description so that you can view it. I'll also link a couple of other really key documents that were released in the last year by CISA and the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, as well as Australia's Centre for Cybersecurity and the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre as well. And they're all centered around securing your edge devices. So right now, I'm going to focus on the FortiGate firewall and how I recommend that people apply some configuration to help secure those devices. So we're going to talk quickly about policies and address objects and groups, and we're going to talk about a few technologies like the Internet Service Database and the IP Reputation Database. As well as we may touch on external threat feeds. But I do have another video about external threat feeds and how they can be imported into your environment. So I'll link that in the description as well. But also with those external threat feeds, you can apply them to these local in policies that we're going to talk about, just like you can the IP Reputation Database. Okay, so firewall policies are traditional firewall-based rules, and these are the rules that everybody is used to configuring on their firewall. And essentially, if you think about the firewall policies, that's sort of inside the box. The firewall service is inside the box. The interfaces are hanging off the outside of the box. So your firewall policies take place between interfaces inside that box, and they allow or deny traffic, and they apply security profiles and all of that goodness. They also have the inherent deny policy, which is great because no traffic should ever be able to traverse a FortiGate firewall without an allow policy. Now, on those external interfaces, you have services running. that, they are services that are running on the appliance, but they're not really firewall services. You can think of those as VPN services, and you can also think your management services. So your SSH server and your web server for managing the FortiGate firewall. Those things are enabled on interfaces specifically. So when you go into network interfaces, you can enable and disable those. Local in policies, they're applied to the interface. They are there to act as an access control list. They protect those services that are hosted and running on those interfaces. Things like your web administration, your VPN, like SSL VPN, things of that nature. They've been enhanced over time so that they could, apply to not just IP addresses, but also named objects. And now with newer versions of FortiOS, I believe it was 7.4 or 7.4.4 that came out, they enabled the ability to use other named objects or other services like the Internet Service Database or the IP Reputation Database, and the threat feeds, which are essentially treated like named objects within the FortiGate. So you can apply those now to those policies, which make them very versatile. They can be configured to allow or deny traffic, the local in policies. However, typically, without the presence of one of these, traffic is going to be allowed. Now, there are some other capabilities that you can use to limit who can manage your firewall through the web interface, or who can access the SSL VPN. So for management, your administrator accounts have trusted hosts options that dictate source IP addresses or subnets that are allowed to communicate and manage that firewall. And as well, the SSL VPN has the capability where you can select an address or a number of address objects that are permitted to create VPN connections to the appliance. Not to say that those aren't great functionality. They are, but they are service related, and sometimes these vulnerabilities that we're seeing are unauthenticated vulnerabilities. They bypass the regular security mechanisms of those services. The local in policies are really a hard and fast ACL on the interface itself that allow or deny traffic before you even get the opportunity to communicate with the software-based service that may be vulnerable to attack. So address objects, anybody who's really created a firewall policy in a FortiGate firewall knows that these address objects exist. And you've probably used any combination of the various types. So subnets, which is a single host with a /32 mask, or an actual subnet of IPs. You can have an IP range if there's maybe a subset of IPs within your subnet that you need to apply a policy to. There's fully qualified domain names where you reference it based on the fully qualified domain name. The FortiGate does a DNS lookup and caches the results to determine what IP address that name is associated. And there's MAC address objects, again, specific network interfaces or devices that you can you can apply policy to there. But one of the key things that we're talking about here is we're talking about hardening the edge. And for that, one really great functionality are geography-based address objects. So they can be created in the web UI, they can be created in the CLI. My examples today are pretty well going to be CLI based, simply because local in policies typically have to be created through the CLI. So we're also going to talk about primarily the IP reputation database, but that's sort of a subset of the internet service database. So I just wanted to quickly talk about both of those. So your internet service database is a list of internet services, typically cloud-based applications that you may need access to. So for instance, I would often use a couple of the services to block all outbound traffic from servers, except for maybe Windows Update. Preferably only the Windows Update server internally would be able to talk to Windows Update. And the cool thing about the Internet Service Database is that it uses all of these curated pieces of information that come in. So it maintains a list for each of these services, not only of the IP addresses that you might need to connect to, but also the protocols and the ports that need to be opened as well. So when you're creating a firewall policy around the Internet Service Database, you really just have to select the service and away you go. Now the IP reputation database, again, it is curated data that automatically gets updated on your firewall with your license. These are curated threat feeds primarily that Fortinet or FortiGuard maintains for you, and these could be things like known botnet command and control servers and known servers that are known to be involved in phishing campaigns. They are things like anonymizing VPN services or Tor exit nodes or Tor relay nodes. All of these things that you may want to limit traffic to and from your environment for. I worked for an organization at one point and we did a bit of an analysis, and something like 90% of our attacks against our web servers were coming from Tor. So we blocked the Tor relay, Tor exit nodes inbound into our environment and reduced our attack surface tremendously. Okay, so I'm going to pop over to my other screen here. And on this screen, we'll take a quick look at our configuration. So I've got this configuration file that I just saved, and I can very quickly apply this to any FortiGate firewall that I'm working with. So the initial section here, we are creating a group of, we're creating a number of firewall addresses. And these are geography-based addresses that are going to apply to countries that we may want to block. And, our business has determined that we do not do business in Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, or Belarus. So we've decided that we want to limit our exposure from those countries. So we can, in this section here, we're creating address objects for each of those countries. In the next section, we are creating an address group called nation_state_threats. And we're adding those individual geography objects to the group and just setting a little comment. Now, the next section, we are creating a couple of local in policies on our WAN 1 interface. Now, it's important to understand not every FortiGate firewall names their external interface the same. Some it will be WAN, some will be WAN 1, WAN 2. It could be a zone if you're using SD-WAN. It could be an actual port number, depending on the actual model of FortiGate firewall and your individual config. So just keep that in mind. So in this initial firewall, we are creating a local in policy on WAN 1 that is going to block all of those nation states. So any external address that is geographically based in one of those countries, according to the FortiGate GeoIP database, is going to be blocked when communicating with any service on that external interface. So, for instance, if I had SSL VPN enabled, you would not be able to communicate with that from Belarus, China, Iran, North Korea, or Russia. Now, notice when creating these, we're using edit 0. Edit 0 simply creates the next policy. So if you've already got 2 or 3 local in policies, it will just add an additional one. So the next local in policy that we are creating here is also applied to the WAN 1 interface and to all addresses. So any address that might be associated with that. And you can see here that it sets the internet service source enabled, and that command allows us to select internet services. And that will give us, we would be able to choose specific applications from the ISDB, or in our case, we're using it so that we can gain access to those, the IP reputation database feeds. So we can see here, internet service source name, and so we have we're blocking the malicious server, Tor exit nodes, Tor relay nodes. We're blocking known phishing servers. We're blocking known spam servers. We're blocking internet-based proxy servers, and we're also blocking anonymous VPN. Now, you don't have to block all of those, but I personally, in my environment, do not need any of those to be accessible, and I prefer that people do not connect using those anonymizing services, because it makes it more challenging for me to know if the connections are legitimate or not. Okay, and so that creates that. So those are our local in policies. Now, also, maybe within your environment, you may want to utilize those same feeds. And oftentimes this is what I will see configured, or what I will configure for clients who want to ensure that devices within their environment that may, if they were to get compromised, may not be able to communicate with their with command and control servers. They may not be able to exfiltrate data back to where they normally are. So I will create these 4 firewall policies, and they're essentially 2 firewall policies, both inbound and outbound. So we block nation state threats inbound, and we also block nation state threats outbound. And again, we also deny from Tor and malicious. So we're, like I say, blocking Tor exit and relay nodes. We're also blocking malicious servers and phishing servers and spamming servers and those anonymizing VPNs and whatnot. And we're blocking that inbound as well. And then I'll take those policies and I move them directly to the top of my processing order within my FortiGate. That ensures that nobody or no device will be able to establish those communications. And even if I were to open a rule that would open HTTPS traffic from the internet to an internal web server, those rules would take precedent, blocking that traffic if it's coming from one of those malicious threat feeds or from one of the geographic regions that I just don't want traffic to traverse from. Now here is the FortiGate web UI, and I just wanted to show sort of how I normally set that up. So I'm old school. I still like sequence viewing when I look at my policies, and I then just create sort of a bunch of sequence groups that make sense to me. Some people like interface pair view, but this just works for me, having been around since before the interface pair view was available. So we can see here that we've got a number of blocks. So the Talos stuff, that is an external threat feed that I'm ingesting, and if you watch the video that I will link in the description, you'll see how to create those feeds. As well, we can see the nation state threats and the Tor, and and that is both to and from those environments. And you know, it hasn't been that long since I don't know if I've got many hits on those policies or not. And again, this is just a lab environment, so it's not a ton of traffic, but I do see you know, some here where I'm blocking a little bit of traffic inbound and some going outbound. That's more or less test traffic. Okay. Well, that's it. I really do apologize for sort of a rushed video here. Like I said, I really wanted to get that content out earlier, and I just haven't been able to find the time. And after seeing, again, yet another edge device, and particularly a FortiGate vulnerability that's being exploited in the wild, I really wanted to address that a little bit. So if you like this video, if you would like to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. If you would like to leave questions, comments below, I try my best to stay on top of comments and get back to people as much as possible. But also, I think it's really valuable for the community to sort of communicate back and forth in the comments as well. So I think that is one way that we can all sort of share information and ideas on how to do things. Okay, thanks a lot, and have a great day.